This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Friest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Thanks again for listening. With an encore career, the rewards are better than a cold beer on a hot day. And you can be creating value in the world beyond just winning that next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and you could do the work you love. In other words, you can live the dream. Now, if you're ready to get started, please contact me at lynn@lynnfriest.com. Today's episode is Developing Engaged Talent Through Mentoring with Ellin Sidell. We're going to be talking with Ellin about her journey from corporate executive and her program on mentorship and how she built this program. And then also, she's going to be sharing with us the benefits, both for the mentees, the people that are receiving, and the mentors, and the benefits to the organization. And especially listen for where are the areas that you might be able to go back into your organization or another organization and serve in a mentor role. So I think that'll be something to listen for as Ellin shares her information. Well, welcome, Ellin. It's great to have you here. And I guess we'll get started by maybe you could just talk a little bit about what's your journey so far been?
Thank you, Lynn. It's awesome to be here. My journey in terms of a transition career, is that the place to start?
What?
I just departed from a 35-year career in corporate America, working at least 3 iconic Fortune 500 companies, which people will have recognized: Nestle, Microsoft, and Costco. And in my last 5 years at Costco, I developed a mentee ring program that was a volunteer activity. I was actually getting paid to do IT work as a product owner and other business analyst type roles. And really my soul caught fire with the idea of helping others see the potential that they have, that maybe they don't see in themselves, because I had so many transformative mentors help me. And that kind of led me to my journey of realizing that I've maybe always been an entrepreneur. I was when I was 13, actually. So coming full circle and moving into developing my own business in mentoring, coaching, leadership, and agile consultancy. So I'm very excited.
Great. The mentee program and the mentorship program, what were some of the elements of it you developed and that now you're going to be sharing in the future?
Yeah, that's one of my offerings. I'm actually really looking for medium and large businesses who might want to put in a program that scales. It's called Leverage Mentorship for a reason, because it's not only efficient in terms of the number of hours that the mentors are, and that could be at any level in a corporation. We did it at Costco at a VP level. It's only a couple hours a month, but it's also a whole like circle or ring. And so you're anywhere between 12 and 18 people in a room once a month. And the goal and the thing that was so important to me was, again, to give mentees a chance to really do a couple things. Number one, upskill on their transferable skills. That can be communication, other types of transferable skills, network, and develop leadership skills. Because at the end of the day, the mentees want to stand out. They're all about their careers and what can they do. But at the same time, the mentors are all about how do we upskill employees. So there's this common goal there. They also, as mentors, want to help teach the corporate culture, and they want to help address engagement. And the Mentee Ring program is a way for mentees and mentors to get to know each other and build relationships. I could tell you a lot more, but that's it in a nutshell. There's more elements to it, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think from when we've talked about this earlier, and you had said that it started at one level of engagement, but then you actually expanded the program so it involved more people.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I did a pilot, I used to have a teasing voice that it's not the elevator pitch, it's the salad bar line pitch, because we'd have a cafeteria at work and I bumped into the VP of Journeys, which was our diversity inclusion group. And I'm like, I have this great program and it's a complement to your other programs in mentorship. And so she finally let me do a pilot. So we had 2 rings and 17 mentees, and then that scaled to At one point in this last year, we had over 90 people get accepted. So that'll be 6 rings at 90 people. And this was the beginning of year 6 when I left my corporate job at Costco. But I was very blessed that they saw the value in the DISC training, the personality assessment, and the communication training that I had brought into it. And so they hired me as a consultant this year.
Okay, that's great. So that's interesting. It was not just mentor-mentee, but also you had some additional training that helped people with those other skills you mentioned.
Absolutely. DISC, I think, is such a great communication skill, and it helps everybody appreciate everybody's styles, and we're all working in teams. And so I just thought it was a really good element to add.
Okay, that's great. What was your transition like then as you moved away from that corporate world into this now when you're working on your own?
It's been literally a transition of 3,000 miles because I moved from Washington State to Florida. So that's been a little bit time consuming, but it's just been really exciting to be able to flex my creative wings and figure out what my brand's going to be. And obviously you and I met through my Kim, what a best person to help us with being the brand and get some guidance there and how I want to add value. And really the area that I'm most interested in adding value in a nutshell is to help people realize that they are meaning makers. They make the meaning in their own life, whether that's in your own business, working in a corporation, because I got so much meaning out of creating my mentee rank program, which wasn't what I was getting paid for. But yet I had many years of IT experience. And so it was super helpful for me to help network and help mentees meet other people they wouldn't normally meet. And then on the personal side, what do we want to do to make meaning in our lives? Like what you're doing, what's your encore career and how do you get meaning out of that? And so that's really my umbrella. And there's going to be different programs underneath that I'm putting pen to paper, and hopefully we'll have a launch here in the next 3 to 6 months.
I'm curious then, what were some of the practical experiences you faced as you went from the everyday corporate life into the, hey, I can do anything I want, but what is that kind of a realm of life?
Well, it is kind of funny. Really, at the end of the day, you follow your bliss. I continue to get insights, but I just laughed at myself the other day because I have so many different certifications I've got. I started off with the John Maxwell certification in leadership because I remembered listening to him when I was in my 20s. And then I love DISC, the assessment that I just talked about with the personality styles and communication. And then I did EQ, and now I'm doing a Tiny Habits course. And I'm like, wow, this is all about mindset and being aware of yourself and your motivations and what other people's motivations are. It's all kind of, and I had a degree in sociology, so it's all kind of within this realm that sometimes you have to look backwards in life and laugh that it's been in front of you for many decades.
Yeah, sometimes what informs us in the future is there that we may not have seen in the same way in the past.
Exactly.
Also curious, you said you got these certifications, but I'm guessing, just like I learned to do podcasting, there are probably some other things you started learning that were, I think, helpful to you, whether it be skills or just knowledge. What are some specific things that you found that you learned after you left the corporate world?
I think that probably the most important thing, and the irony is that I'm good at this, but I had to maybe remind myself, is that when you reach out and network and meet other people and you learn through you're ahead of me for my development. And so I'm like, Lynn, what did you do for this? And who did you use for that? Like copywriting skills and marketing skills and branding skills and how to find additional talent so that you're not the only solopreneur doing everything by yourself, from website development to marketing to social media. And like, where do you want to start on? So luckily, I decided I had a pretty good network on LinkedIn, and I was really looking to connect with employees or corporations, and that kind of was a natural fit there. And so these are like all of the things that come to mind that I've been learning in the last year to 2 years.
Okay. As you made your physical transition from one state to another, was it easier or harder as you decided to start a business also?
It's actually delayed things a little bit, but I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We're probably within a month of having a new office set up, and then I'm good to go. I forgot one other skill, which was sales skills. And in fact, cold calling, I'm learning scripting for sales and language patterns that resonate with people. I'm learning NLP. That's another thing that I got. I don't know if you guys know about neuro-linguistic programming, but there's a lot of insights to be had through just reaching out and finding out what other people have done before me.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's always true, that these are things we may not have had to think much about as we presented ourselves in our corporate lives, but it is true now that we're trying to solve problems for other people out that don't know us. And that's a thing that I've noticed for myself as well. Nobody cares what positions I had or titles I had. So I had to really start thinking about, okay, what is my value proposition for these people? And I'm sure you've had that same conversation as to how do I describe myself to people I don't know as to how I can help them?
Absolutely. And in fact, I found myself coaching someone and asking these questions that maybe have only like completely gotten into my, my cells of recognition around what is the problem or set of problems I'm trying to help people with. And so one example might be that I have this picture in my head about an employee in a Fortune 500 company or even a medium-sized business who is trying to reach for that ladder. They're at the floor and they're at the very first rung of the ladder and it's too high for them. Mm-hmm. So how do we describe what that problem is? They're frustrated. They don't know what ladder to climb up for their career. And so there's all these different problems. And so I want to be able to help that person see that they have all the resources necessary to help guide them. I tease that maybe I'm a little bit like the Sherpa guide, up the mountain, but they have their boots and the backpack on because it's a journey. And so we have to learn each other's styles and how to help them. So that's getting to the root of what's the problem. Now, on the personal side, myself, I'm a 3-time cancer thriver. And so I really ended up learning that resiliency was a skill. And so for those people that are feeling stuck, malaise, they just don't have that joy of life anymore. Resiliency skills are completely learnable. And again, Sherpa guide, let me see how I can help you with that. Those are the things. It's like, how do you get encapsulated around what problem you solve and what your solution is? And so in my branding that will be coming out in the next 3 to 6 months, it's really all about the Sidell method. Like what I'm going to do is help teach people what I've gone through and applied in my own both career in Fortune 500 companies and my own personal life. Because, we get thrown the school of hard knocks. And we just get back right up. I don't know what other choice there is. And that's really, I think, hopefully it will be beneficial for people.
Yeah. And just circling back for a second to your mentorship program, I think that's really a valuable thing to be offering people because in my eyes, companies, big companies, medium companies, they're engaging with a lot of new talent, maybe talent that they haven't engaged with before. And yet the new talent needs help in developing themselves. And often the current leaders of an organization are very busy people and they have little time for development. So having a program like you're presenting, I think could be a huge value to both the new talent coming on board as well as the companies themselves that want to be engaged with their new talent.
Yeah, it's funny. I've done a lot of research on mentorship and no one talks about leverage mentorship. And this idea with only a few hours a month of a VP's time, he can or she can influence and be around 12 to 15 to 18 individual contributors. And what are those folks trying to do? They're trying to, like I said, climb up that ladder. They're trying to understand where they fit. They're trying to understand the corporate culture. At the end of the day, they're interested in their career. And so they need to see themselves driving it, which they do from the very beginning of the program because they're the ones figuring out what transferable skills they want to work on. And then they get to showcase by being a teacher of a particular skill that they voted on, they get to be seen as leaders in the eyes of these VPs and start to do that relationship building. And that's what we all want, right? We all want to feel recognition for what we're doing and contributing. And we all want to see that there's a path for us to be seen as leaders, as positive influence makers, because that's what John Maxwell says. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So we're doing it all the time. So we might as well do it on purpose with a career goal in mind and these budding relationships so that we can be the CEO or the pilot of our own careers.
Sure. Yeah. And I have a friend and a teacher that has said work is really all about conversation and how well you engage in conversation with various people. And so I just can fully resonate with what you're saying there. Is helping the new talent understand the conversations they need to be having with themselves, but then also with peers and the leaders, I think is a marvelous thing to be sharing with people.
And it's interesting because Simon Sinek always talks about what is my why, or each of us to look inside our hearts, if you will. And what's really super cool about this setup is that it becomes a community of mentees that instead of just trying to climb the ladder, they're actually building the ladder because they're teaching each other. They're getting to know each other. That's getting observed by people that are senior in the org who are pouring into them with the storytelling around the culture of this particular company. Of course, Costco has a pretty strong culture. I think they're known for that. And so these stories are so impactful. And I've had examples of mentees that were in the program for the last 5 years that have had 2 promotions already because she invited her VP to the presentation she did. The VP saw her in a way that he'd never seen her, asked her to do the presentation in front of all hands. And like I said, she's been promoted twice. It's a really great way to stand out. And you're doing it for this mutual purpose of growth, right? And learning and adding value. And that just becomes a really powerful way in this kind of forum.
Yeah, I recall with my former employer, there was some programs, not exactly like the mentorship program, but they did have a program where senior leaders worked with new leaders. And one of the key points was the senior leaders talked about their journey, talked about their experiences, talked about the things that they failed at as well as succeeded at. And basically the leaders had the opportunity, I think what they called it at the time was a teachable point of view, but that's a term I've heard before. But I thought that was always interesting that they, especially the new talent, people that hadn't been there for very long in the company, could really see, okay, and they heard from a variety of leaders. So it wasn't just one person's point of view, but several of them, and they often were interestingly diverse in what either they experienced or what they succeeded at. So I think that's, again, it's a marvelous, and plus what I heard talking to a few of those leaders was, it was a marvelous experience for them to actually think through that. All of a sudden, it clarified for things. So there was not just a benefit for the new people, but also a benefit for the leaders too.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we had a 42-year Costco employee, because he actually started in Price Club to work for Costco that long, who was a huge proponent of our program, who would sincerely say to every single time he was in a ring, he'd been in the program 4 out of 5 years, I have an open door policy. Come and talk to me about anything. Like, he wanted to hear from all these different people because he was so passionate about operations background being really important. And not everybody in the company is in a role that has operations background. And ops from a retailer perspective is the warehouses and the depots and all of that. And so he was going to learn and then at the same time give an opportunity to give that operations exposure and some of the little stories. And so it was a huge win for him. And he's like, why don't people take me up on it? I need it. And so I'd be like, great. And so when I was in a different ring from him, I was telling my mentee, you can reach out. You can talk to Todd. He literally wants to hear from you. So it's just saying exactly what you're saying. There's this mutual respect when this type of relationship gets built. And it's a win-win, really.
Yeah, another thing I recall is that some of the leaders said, as we go higher in the leadership ranks, people don't even confide in us as much anymore. Some of these people, as a leader, I get to hear some of the questions that are being at the lower levels that none of my normal reports are necessarily going to bring up to me, not through any ill will. It won't occur to them to share those thoughts with me. And I get to hear what are the current frontline questions. And they thought that was very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Since I've left, the current volunteers are setting up roundtables so that there's, like I said, 90 people in the mentoring program. They can sign up to have 1 hour with a VP and they'll be like a smaller group, like 15. So that's another way to get that same kind of visibility to what you were just discussing.
Sure. Well, then the other piece that you and I are in a mastermind, and I think this whole idea of peer learning is extremely valuable for people because even though you and I and others in our group are on different paths, you might say, the fact that we all get to hear each other talk about the successes, the failures, the struggles, I think it's such a rich learning environment to be in a group. So like your circles and stuff like that. Again, it's so much better than just being in a class where there's an instructor giving out information. This learning between people, I think, is, again, really powerful.
I was explaining to someone the other day, I don't know if this is exactly how Mike considers it, but that they're like, what's a mastermind? I go, think of it as a board of directors. You're in a smaller group. I don't know how many people on our board of directors, but they're probably less than 10. And you're something come up in your business and you just need some thinking partners and you bring it up and all of a sudden you get this kind of like popcorn, this one idea, another idea, and then bingo, you're like, oh my God, your thinking got up-leveled so much through the interaction with the members of the mastermind. And you're right, that same kind of thing can happen in a mentee ring.
Yeah. One of my favorite authors, John Seeley Brown, talked about it being like a architectural firm. And he said in architectural firms, they'll gather all the associates together along with the senior leaders, then have each associate explain what projects they're working on. And so the senior leaders can provide insight on that particular project. but all the other associates are learning at the same time. So this whole idea of, you're not teaching one-on-one, you're teaching one-to-many in some cases. And they're learning from each other as well as their leaders.
My first husband's dad was a doctor, and he said in medical school there was see one, do one, teach. A little bit scary. Hopefully they've had practice before they do surgery, but it's like this kind of thing. Okay, you see someone talk about a topic, delve into it, and then you're doing the experiential learning because you're actually in the ring yourself. You're presenting whatever your training is. And one of the areas that I felt like I could add some value because I was in IT for so long was how to do facilitation, because facilitation techniques are learned also. And especially through DISC, you're going to completely get all the extroverts in the room. Yeah. But then how do you get the introverts? So you have like little techniques around what you can put in the chat box, what you think, and what are your focus questions? And I would tell them my last couple of years, I'm like, let's do the TED Talk. There was an hour in a ring. TED Talk means about 18 to 20 minutes you doing one-way communications. Then the rest of it is facilitation. What are the focus questions? How do you want to facilitate the room about whatever that topic was? So you get the experiential part of the learning, right? Where people are like, something like that happened to me once, and this is what happened. And so it was hitting all three of those things.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing you did there, because that whole idea of, like you say, being able to facilitate the discussion after presenting something, I think is something the students don't often get to have. But two, it really sharpens our thinking of whatever. All of a sudden, we could see that maybe they didn't understand exactly what I was saying based on what we're talking about now, or maybe I should have said something different. So, that whole idea of, like you say, facilitating a discussion after a presentation is marvelous. That's really something.
Yeah, thanks.
So as you have started presenting your programs, presenting what you're going to do, have you decided on how many offerings you're going to have or what kind of things you're going to offer? What are the services you think you may be starting with?
Right now, I'm about halfway through my Tiny Habits certification. So I'm going to pretty much start there. So that'll be probably like February-ish that I'll start there. I am going to create what's called a continuity program, but it's really going to be a Sidell method of leadership. And it's actually on my website in case anyone wants to look at it, ellinsidell.com. And it's called the 9 C's. So I'm going to slightly rebrand it. But the idea is that there's so many different learnings that we can have that make us more valuable as employees. And they start with C, culture or communication, all these different things. And so the continuity program is basically going to be anyone can start at any point in time. It's different than a mastermind where you have to have everyone start and stop at the same time. And it doesn't matter the order. And the goal will be, I introduce kind of a little bit of teaching around the subject through a video kind of training, and then they can opt in to more of a collaborative kind of discussion once a month. And then probably every 2 weeks after alternating, we'll do like a Q&A. And so then that'll be like, I'll be your thinking partner. And so there'll be different levels of what that will cost people. And they'll also get a discount if they want to bring in fellow members. But I think what it'll do is it'll demonstrate to all these employees who want to stand out and they want to have those career discussions with the financial part of it, with their management. Look, I'm growing. I've got a growth mindset. I'm going through this program. Here's how it impacts you, equip them with what they need to do to have these conversations with their management. And at the same time, what do the managers want to do? They want to have engagement. They want to, this continuous learning. And it gets back to this idea of making meaning, right? The managers want to have their employees feel that they're engaged and they have influence. And the employees want to feel that they can influence their managers to catch them doing all of the stuff that they need to get to that next level or to grow in their careers. And that could grow not just in terms of promotion, which is fantastic, but there's all sorts of different ways to grow. Back in the olden days, if you will, early in my career, and they probably still do it, they would have like management rotation programs and stuff. Nowadays, you can design your own management rotation. You could take that job as a lateral, but it's maybe more visibility, working with more senior people, or it could be like project management. Anyway, there's lots of different ways to grow. And so stitching that together from an individual employee to kind of encapsulate that with their manager makes them better equipped for their career discussions when reviews and other things come around.
Sure. Well, it makes me think of our work with Mike Kim and his You Are the Brand. And the whole idea of in today's world as an employee, you're still, even if you're not an independent worker, you're still creating your brand with respect to the you in the corporation, people have to understand what you do and your skills and where you're excellent at, those kinds of things. So you're really still, you're internally marketing yourself rather than external, but it's the same ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right on.
You've mentioned before, and the tiny habits, and I've been a big fan of that for a long time. And we both got to meet a woman who's the leaders of that group. And I think those are especially important because sometimes we get good ideas, we get things we want to do, but then actually creating them into a habit of how we do our life or do our work, you need some structure around that too. So that's interesting that you're going to be certified in the tiny habits method.
Yeah, Linda Fogg was the lady who's been working with her brother, BJ. And I'm just having a ball taking this tiny habits course because it just makes sense. And it's something that I had put in place with one aspect I'd put in place with my mentoring program, which is we had a graduation, like a celebration, like at the very end. And what the tiny habits is doing is reminding me that anytime we have a success in a little habit, it gets encoded, if you will, through an emotional celebration. And so we should just remind ourselves, patting ourselves on the back is really a good thing. It helps us. And we could do this silently. It doesn't have to be a big public thing. Yay, I did my habit for today, whatever that might be. I remember to drink water all day long. Yay. And so it's the kind of same thing as that. Part of the mentoring program is to have that recognition of the mentees and to have them feel proud of the work that they did. Because like any program, you get out of it what you put into it. And so if they're just not, and all we can do is put a salt lick out there. I think I teased someone that I was telling someone you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And my husband talked to a farmer, said, sure you can, put out a salt lick. And I think of kind of the mentoring program in a way as a salt lick for getting the employees curious about how they can grow themselves and how that can lead to really good things for both themselves and the company.
Yeah, and I think that whole idea of repetition or of continuous work on an idea is so valuable. So like your mentorship rings and those things, you work on ideas over time and they become much more powerful than if you just have a one and done seminar you go to or something like that.
Absolutely. And it's so true because it's like you get more and more when you look at yourself and you ask yourself questions. I don't know if you found this to be true, but I get more insights the more I think about something. I'm an entrepreneur. I should have figured that out. I was an entrepreneur at 13. I kind of had to rediscover it. And so it's like honing and you get a whole nother level of insight. And I think that's true.
Yeah. Recently, I did a podcast on a thought that I had for the new year is rather than work on goals for 2023, I was going to decide what are my 7 questions I'm going to consider during 2023. So I don't know how it'll work out for me, but I thought just being reminded every day of these 7 questions may get me farther than trying to think about maybe what are the big goals I have. So it was just something that has me interested in what I'm going to try out next year.
Socrates would be proud of you.
I know. Yeah.
And a lot of coaches.
Yeah. And a lot of it, of course, I think a coach by nature and stuff like that. So I think it's, as I said during that podcast, that we're so rushed to get to an answer, especially in the corporate world, and one right answer, when in fact, maybe exploring the questions and having several right answers is possible too. So we'll just have, and I think again, your programs are the kind of thing that here again, people will be looking at different questions and hearing different answers. And I think that's going to be powerful.
Yeah, there's a part of me, just so you know, that's kind of a science fiction fan. Mm-hmm. And so when you say there are lots of possibilities, like there's a lot of parallel universes out there. They're in superposition, and then we get to decide where we want to take the action, whether they're tiny habits or larger.
Absolutely. So thank you for all the insights you've shared with us today, Ellin. Any final thoughts? And then we'll also be supplying the link to your website and any particular programs you want highlighted. So any listeners of the podcast can get that in the show notes. But any final thoughts you have for us today?
If anyone is interested in downloading the free 20 mentoring questions that matter, I could give you that link and that would be awesome. My gift to you guys. And just want to thank you again for having me on. This has been really exciting.
It's been a fun conversation and a very informative one. I thank you so much. And I think the work you're doing with mentorship and those programs is going to be very powerful. Thanks again, Ellin.
Thank you, Ellin. Bye-bye.
Well, again, many thanks for Ellin. on sharing all her wisdom and knowledge and the experience she had. We got to hear about her journey, her individual journey. We got to hear about her experience of implementing a mentorship program. And then also really enjoyed the benefits of the program for both the mentors, the organization, and the mentees. Now, we're going to have Ellin's contact info and her free offer in the show notes, so look for that. And remember, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can be creating great value in the world beyond just winning the next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. So as a reminder, if you're ready to get started today, please contact me at lynn@lynnfrias.com. Or head over to my website, listen to a few podcasts, and get on the email list. So we'll see you soon, and thanks for listening.